Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this video lesson about the Reign of Terror. I'm Miss Jennifer Blank, and I will be your guide in this journey. It occurred to me, I have 4 parts of the French Revolution and video lessons, right? 4 video lessons on that, but the Reign of Terror is so important that I didn't want to just pay it lip service in one of the other video lessons. I wanted to give it a video lesson all by itself. So without further ado, here we go. All right, so some things we want to take a look at. All right, what was it, right? When and why did it happen? We're going to look at the timeline, and we're going to look at the results and historical significance of the events, or the series of events that time in French Revolutionary history. We're also going to take a look at actually a couple of primary sources. So hold on to your hats, and here we go. All right, let's start with what was it, okay? Well, the French revolutionary state used extensive executions and violence to defend the revolution and suppress its alleged internal enemies. This was spearheaded by the Jacobins, one of the 2 parties, I guess you could say, that were directly involved in the French Revolution itself and then the governance afterward. The Reign of Terror is a fascinating and horrible period in human history, but there's a great deal we can learn from it. The extremism of the Reign of Terror, the extremism of Jacobins led to a lot of horrible things. This is a primary case in point where as students of history, we should learn from that history and understand that extremism in any form is bad. It is bad. Even if you argue that there's a moral imperative for your extremism, the very act of being extreme will remove any moral imperative you once had. Okay, and this is a major lesson that we need to learn from the Reign of Terror. Now, historically speaking, we're going to talk about the results and the series of events that came directly from the Reign of Terror. Precisely what those people attempted to avoid, they caused in engaging in this behavior. All right, so when and why did it happen? So I'm going to bring my little camera guy up here. It was the summer of 1793 to July 1794, so about a year's worth of awfulness. The French revolutionaries sought to spread their ideals to all of Europe, and they encouraged the overthrow of existing governments in other countries. Not a good idea. This is bad. See, Europe was just kind of like, all right, the French can keep their stuff over there, and we're just going to stay over here. But then these French revolutionaries decided, in spectacular fashion, we're going to spread Republican ideals throughout all of Europe and overthrow all existing monarchical governments. Like, that was what they wanted to happen. And of course, these other governments are like, whoa, wait a second. Now there's a problem, because now the French are not just dealing with their own stuff. They're directly influencing and affecting the lives of other nations. So now those other nations are going to step up, and they're going to defend what is existing in their nations at present, right? So other nations, of course, feel threatened. They begin mobilizing for war. So now we have war. I mean, at the height of the Reign of Terror, or actually, I'm sorry, not the height, but right at the start of it, France was at war with, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 other European countries because they were just going head to head. The Jacobins use this as an excuse to weed out those disloyal to the revolution. All right, so now the timeline. So we're going to start over here on the left-hand side. So in 1792, a couple of events occurred. The French invade the Austrian Netherlands, primarily because they wanted to get access to the Scheldt River, which through a treaty with Great Britain had specify the terms of trade along that river. So that's a key reason why they did that. The convention declared that it would help all people who wanted new government, which I said on the previous slide. And once they proclaimed that river was open, they were in effect violating an existing treaty. So now Great Britain's got its panties in a twist. With good reason. I mean, the French are just kind of stepping in. They shouldn't be involved in that. They should just deal with their own stuff, right? In April 1793, the Jacobins, otherwise known as the Mountain, they take control of the French government. Now, at this point, the French Republican government has now been radicalized. The Jacobins are radicals. Keep that in mind. So the Committees of Public Safety and General Security were established. From your readings, you should know about the Committee of Public Safety. That's where Robespier is going to come into play. But he doesn't start with the Committee of Public Safety. That was introduced and established here, and he joins up later on. In May 1793, the Society of Revolutionary Republican Women was founded to protect the rights of women that they believed were not being defended in the post-revolutionary government. In June 1793, the sans culottes, you can look that up. You should know what that is. They invaded the convention. They demanded the expulsion of the Girondists. All right, those were the more conservative more temperate party involved at the time. All right, so now I'm going to shift my little camera over here. There we go. In August of 1793, the Levée en masse was issued. We're going to read excerpts from that in just a minute. In September 1793, price controls were established. Counter-revolutionary uprisings were put down. All right, so you're talking about the deaths of a lot of people, a lot of rioting, a lot of violence, lots of problems during the month of September. In November, women were excluded from government and military participation in any kind. The new calendar was introduced. The de-Christianization of France occurred. Now, here is what I'm talking about with extremism. Like, okay, so they had a problem with the fact that Catholics and the church basically controlled French government and caused problems for non-Catholic people. Okay, I get that. I understand that. But now you're doing to religion what religion did to you, right? Those are not Enlightenment ideals. The idea is freedom of, okay, and freedom from, but not the extermination of religion generally. That's just as bigoted. That's just as unenlightened as having full-on religious control, right? So they really, really stepped in it with that one. That was a dumb, bonehead move, all right? And stark contrast, the American Revolution does not result in this. The American Revolution didn't result in any of this, which is why it was successful and this one wasn't. They also have the introduction of the revolutionary tribunals, which are going to take place for most of the time frame of the Reign of Terror from this point on. And this is where they also lose their Enlightenment footing, because now everyone and anyone could be an enemy of the revolution, and if that person was even suspected of being an enemy, they were killed. Forget about trial, forget about jury your peers, forget about the natural rights. That's all gone, because you're an enemy of the revolution, you're an enemy of the republic, and you must be destroyed. This is like, I mean, Star Wars. I like Star Wars. Don't get me wrong, like I'm about Star Wars, but Star Wars completely took its cue from the French Revolution. Can I just tell you? Like, if you really think about the French Revolution and then go watch them movies, let me tell you something. You are going to see some parallels. I love George Lucas, but he got his best stuff from history. All I'm saying, best soap opera ever. All right, and then in 1794, you finally have the fall of Robespier, who went like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs toward the end of his rule. All right, so results and significance, big picture. Move my camera back down here in my little recording there. 25,000 people dead. Enlightenment ideals that were present at the beginning of the French Revolution are now non-existent. You had the Thermidorian reaction, the establishment of the Directory, which of course led directly to Napoleon. So, good job, French revolutionaries. You got yourself a dictator who was actually more enlightened than you in a lot of ways, but that's a subject of a future video lesson. All right, so now let's look at some excerpts from the Levée en masse that I mentioned on the timeline earlier. Okay, so I'm going to move my little guy up there. From this moment until that in which the enemy shall have been driven from the soil of the Republic, all Frenchmen are in permanent requisition for the service of the armies. The young men shall go to battle. The married men shall forge arms and transport provisions. The women shall make tents and clothing and shall serve in the hospitals. The children shall turn old linen into lint. The aged shall betake themselves to the public places in order to arouse the courage of the warriors and preach the hatred of kings and the unity of the Republic. Okay. 2. The national building shall be converted into barracks, the public places into workshops for arms. The soil of the cellar shall be washed in order to extract therefrom the saltpeter. The arms of the regulation caliber shall be reserved exclusively for those who march against the enemy. The service of the interior shall be performed with hunting pieces and side. The saddle horses are put into requisition to complete the cavalry corps and the draft horses. Other than those employed in agriculture shall convey the artillery and the provisions. And this one, my favorite, the Committee of Public Safety is charged to take all necessary measures to set up without delay an extraordinary manufacture of arms of every sort, which corresponds with the ardor and energy of the French people. It is accordingly authorized to form all the establishments, factories, workshops, and mills, which shall be deemed necessary for the carrying on of these works, as well as to put in requisition, within the entire extent of the Republic, the artists and working men who can contribute to their, whoa, I missed a spot there, who can contribute. The representatives of the people sent out for the execution of the present law shall have the same authority in their respective districts, acting in concert with the Committee of Public Safety. They are invested with the unlimited powers assigned to the representatives of the people to the armies. And 7, nobody can get himself replaced in the servitude for which he shall have been requisitioned. The public functionaries shall remain at their posts. So now we're talking about all and out war. And of course, nowhere does it really define, like, what does that enemy look like? And so it sounds like, okay, well, they're just mobilizing for war. It's not so bad. But the problem is that anybody who spoke out, anybody who had a different opinion as to how the government was working, anybody who had maybe a more Republican idea was put to death. Okay, there was no dissent. There was no discussion. There was, if you speak out, if you say anything that is contrary to what the government is doing, you are against the Republic, and you will be put down. And that's exactly what happened. This is how you get 25,000 people dead. All right, dissent was unacceptable, which in a Republican and or Democratic state, dissent is the highest form of patriotism, all right? If you don't have a free society, if you don't have free expression of thought, which was completely gone during the Reign of Terror. It was a disaster. All right, this is an excerpt from Robespier Speech, a Robespier Speech. He was very well known for his oratory. If the spring of popular government in time of peace is virtue, if the springs of popular government and revolution are at once virtue and terror, virtue without which terror is fatal, terror without which virtue is powerless. Terror is nothing other than justice, prompt, severe, inflexible. Are you hearing this? Just listen. It is not, terror is nothing other than justice, prompt, severe, inflexible. It is therefore an emanation of virtue. It is not so much a special principle as it is a consequence of the general principle of democracy applied to our country's most urgent needs. It has been said that the terror is the principle of despotic government. Does your government therefore resemble despotism? Yes. As the sword that gleams in the hand of the heroes of liberty resembles that with which the henchmen of tyranny are armed. Let the despot govern by terror his brutalized subjects. He is right, as a despot. Subdue by terror the enemies of liberty, and you will be right, as founders of the Republic. The government of the Revolution is liberty's despotism against tyranny. Liberty's despotism. Like, are you getting this? This is crazy. Is force made only to protect crime? And is the thunderbolt not destined to strike at the heads of the proud? Nature imposes on every physical and moral being the laws of striving for its own preservation. To reign, crime slaughters innocence, and in crime's hands, innocence resists with all its might. And yet one or the other must succumb. Indulgence for the royalists, cry certain men. Mercy for the villains. No! Mercy for the innocent. Mercy for the weak. Mercy for the weak. Mercy for humanity. Society owes protection only to peaceable citizens. The only citizens in the Republic are the Republicans. For it, the royalists, the conspirators are no strangers, or, rather, enemies. This terrible war waged by liberty against tyranny, is it not indivisible? Are the enemies within not the allies of the enemies without? The assassins who tear our country apart, the intriguers who buy the consciences that hold the people's mandate, the traitors who sell them, the mercenary pamphleteers hired to dishonor the people's cause, to kill public virtue, to stir up the fire of civil discord, and to prepare political counter-revolution, are all those men less guilty or less dangerous than the tyrants whom they serve? All who interpose their treasonous gentleness between those villains and the avenging sword of national justice resemble those who would throw themselves between the tyrant's henchmen and our soldiers' bayonets. All the impulses of their false sensitivity appear to me only sighs of longing for England and Austria. And he goes on like this. You know, you can look at this, you pause the video, read the rest of it, right? And here's some more. I mean, pause the video, read it. I want you to understand the big picture result from this reign of terror. This was a disaster of epic proportions. It was completely anti-Enlightenment, and it undermined everything the French Revolution sought out to accomplish. It ushered in an era of dictatorship and an era of conservatism that was equal in its radicalness to that of the reign of terror itself. This lesson that we learned from history is that extremism is bad in all its forms. And I hope that we've learned this lesson from the Reign of Terror. We will talk about this more in class, and I will see you for Napoleon.